New World Order is coming. Are you ready? Stand by for insights so startling you will never look at the news the same way again. For the next 30 minutes, you will be on the cutting edge.
This is David Bay, Director of Cutting Edge Ministries, on the internet at www.cuttingedge.org, a fundamental Baptist outreach ministry uniquely trained in black magic witchcraft, the prophesied religion of Antichrist. When you view the daily news through a double lens of Bible prophecy and doctrine on the one hand, and a knowledge of black magic witchcraft on the other, you will only then truly understand the events and our leaders of the day. The views expressed belong to us and are not necessarily shared by this station. Stand by for eye-opening news. Today's program is the third in a series on secret societies and is entitled Secret Societies Originated the Unpardonable Sin. The order number is CER 1119, that is 1119. If you want to order the three-part series, specify CER 1117/9. Before we get started on this sequel to last week's study of the Jewish secret society, the Kabbalah, we need to address one fundamental misunderstanding about secret societies, and that is that secret societies are simply and only social organizations which carry out charitable activities. Nothing could be further from the truth. Remember Jesus' warnings against being deceived in Matthew 24, 4-5, in verse 11 and verse 24. In verse 24, Jesus quantified this type of deception at the end of the age as he warned, quote, "If it were possible, they," that's the false prophets, "shall deceive the very elect," unquote. This prophesied deception is to be so very sophisticated and so believable, it will deceive virtually every person on earth who is not saved. Such is the case with all secret societies. They routinely deceive, especially their own members. Freemason Albert Pike, in his book Morals and Dogma, states it is necessary to deceive their own members until it can be determined that they are ready to receive the truth. As we conducted research into this murky world of the New World Order, we have been repeatedly startled by the overwhelming approval given the secret society Freemasonry by the many guiding spirits of occultic writers. For example, Demon Master DK, writing through Alice in the Externalization of the Hierarchy, states on page 511 that the Masonic fraternity is, quote, "the home of the mysteries and the seat of the initiation," unquote. Of course, the word mysteries always refers to the satanic mysteries religions of Babylon and Egypt. Initiations are the initial ceremonies through which a person is admitted into the cult. As we have shared with you before, these initiations are, by their very nature, satanic and life-changing. But Master DK then drops the bombshell about Freemasonry when he states, quote, "It is a far more occult organization than can be realized and is intended to be the training school for the coming advanced occultists," unquote. Master DK has just told us a secret straight out of the pit of hell. Freemasonry is of Satan, all their protestations to the contrary notwithstanding. This is true of all secret societies by whatever name they call themselves. Last week, we examined the little-known historic fact that the Pharisees, who so hated Jesus Christ that they plotted his murder upon the cross, were members of a Jewish secret society called the Kabbalah. Once we understand this fact, we can more easily understand many of the terrible statements against the Pharisees which Jesus uttered. We can also understand more completely how the hatred of the Pharisees seemed to be supernatural, how the hardness of their hearts was so great, even in the midst of the most incredible miracles ever performed. Today we shall study this subject more completely. First, we shall study the special hidden, secular, or earthly knowledge that these secret societies taught. Second, we shall study the pagan promised Redeemer for which the Pharisees were awaiting. Third, we shall understand how the Pharisees felt they simply were duty-bound to kill Jesus Christ. And fourthly, we shall see how the Pharisees could look straight at Jesus' many incredible miracles and hate him even more. The ramifications of this insight for today are extraordinary. The major reason men have traditionally joined secret societies in the past 4,000 years is that they have been promised great and valuable knowledge which must be kept securely preserved within the confines of the society. Members were taught that this hidden secret knowledge was so special, the masses of the people could not possibly comprehend them under any circumstances. This hidden knowledge was both spiritual and temporal. The spiritual knowledge was known as speculative knowledge and was taught after the men had been exposed to the practical earthly knowledge. What were some of the aspects of this practical earthly knowledge? Once we share them with you, you can easily see how a group of persons who possess these secrets could readily reach the point where they would control society economically and socially. New Age author Elizabeth Van Buren, writing in her book Secrets of the Illuminati, states rather that Pythagoras left his home in Greece to live for many years in Egypt. Pythagoras left his home in search of a prize he highly valued. He wanted to learn the secrets of geometry, and he knew that the only place in the world at that time that he could learn geometry was in an Egyptian secret society. In other words, only in a satanic secret society could Pythagoras and many others like him learn geometry. Satan had revealed these precious secrets to the priests of the secret societies for the sole purpose of using the skill in mathematics as the bait to lure the best minds in the world. Satan knew that once a man had successfully been taught something so wonderful and practical as geometry, he would be wide open to receive this false, satanic religion contained within the spiritual or speculative school of knowledge. Thus, Satan revealed this geometry to members of ancient secret societies. Now, at this point, you may be objecting, saying that there is no biblical basis for this concept that Satan can reveal this kind of knowledge to anyone. If this is what you are thinking, you are only partially correct. The Bible does teach us that God revealed practical knowledge to certain families in the Old Testament. When God was preparing to build his sanctuary, he gave Moses extremely detailed instructions as to how to build it, including the materials to be used and the individual instructions as to how to build it. From Exodus 35:30 to chapter 36, verse 4, we see the tremendous revelation that the Holy Spirit had placed the knowledge and practical skill necessary to build this sanctuary according to God's wishes in the minds of certain men. In other words, one morning, these chosen men awoke to discover they suddenly possessed the skillful knowledge to work and create beautiful masterpieces with certain materials. Some suddenly knew how to work with gold, some with silver, and some with bronze. Further, God gave these men the sudden ability to teach this skillful knowledge to others. The purpose of the sudden implantation of knowledge was to glorify God in the building of his sanctuary. Could Satan supernaturally also reveal secrets to men who had given themselves over to the worship of him, so inherent in secret societies? The Bible reveals that Satan can do what he wants in this world, where he is called the Lord of the world, unless the Holy Spirit specifically prohibits him. Members of the occult are taught that certain subjects were revealed to men in secret societies. Some of these subjects, in addition to geometry, were astronomy, physics, medicine, higher mathematics, music, art, literature, and even the planting of subliminal messages. This concept is a shocking one indeed, but now we can understand how the ancient Egyptians could have built such incredibly difficult buildings and monuments, many of which have stood the erosion of time and the natural elements. Now we can understand better how the ancients could have developed such high-level cultures. We can also understand how the few individuals who possess such special knowledge could quickly rise to high levels of prominence and power to the point where they could become the privileged leaders of any culture. We can easily see how these few individuals could accumulate vast wealth for themselves and their posterity. Satan could then use this power, skill, and wealth to further advance his kingdom. But many of you may still harbor doubts about these claims, and it is understandable that you would. After all, these authors are writing about men who lived several thousand years ago. Certainly from a vantage point of this many years, authors may misunderstand some of the historic material. Is there any indication from today's highly technological society that Satan intervened in the minds of men who were worshiping him through secret societies in order to impart sudden knowledge? Indeed there is, and some of these men are still alive. Marcel Vogel, an occultist who was one of the original inventors of the IBM computers, repeatedly claimed in the early 1980s that he had received the inspiration for his computer coding during a psychic molasses dream. In other words, a demon worked through Mr. Vogel to create the computer. Now consider other inventors, which were also occultists. Both inventors of the Apple computer were occultists. To demonstrate that the computer had an occult base, they priced their original computer at $666. Thomas Edison was a dedicated theosophist, a secret society that helped train Adolf Hitler. The developer of the zero-graphic process credited his invention to a psychic dream. And the demon master DK, writing through Alice Bailey in the externalization of the hierarchy, reveals that the atomic bomb, quote, emerged from a first-ray ashram, which is a demon, working in conjunction with a fifth group, which are scientists working for the American government, unquote. If this information is true, it would explain how the tremendous explosion in knowledge and invention, which the world has seen since approximately 1917, has occurred. Within a person's lifetime, the world has reached a point where the economy can be global and can be so structured that no one can buy or sell unless they take some kind of a mark. The world has reached a point where rulers could keep track of their subjects every minute of every day. The world has reached a point that cultural and linguistic differences that have historically kept the peoples of the world divided have now been overridden so that we can see the one world economy, religion, and government forming. None of this apparent fulfillment of God's end-time prophecy could have been possible in the horse and buggy days of the past. This approaching scenario is possible only because of the tremendously sudden explosion of knowledge in the 20th century. Thus, we can see how the secret societies were able to lure the best minds in the world in every age, and were further able to impart to them the very practical knowledge which would enable them to dominate their culture for Satan. Secret societies are literally Satan's church by which he has passed his plan to the next generation. But now let us return to our core subject of the Pharisees. As we said last week, secret societies were also looking for the sudden appearance of a promised Redeemer. However, their promised Redeemer was not the one promised through biblical prophecy. Rather, their promised Redeemer was a man who had reached perfection through many lifetimes of reincarnation, and upon whom the Christ consciousness would descend at the right moment in world history to lead the world into its foreseen golden age. In other words, this counterfeit Christ for whom the pagans were awaiting is the Antichrist. Satan had cleverly dispersed the prophecy of the coming Redeemer in many secret societies of that day. The wise men who came to Bethlehem seeking the king who had been born had been awaiting for the pagan Redeemer. More specifically, they were knowledgeable of the remarkably precise prophecy in Daniel 9, 24 to 26, and they realized the world was within a man's lifetime of fulfillment. These wise men were members of the pagan sect called the Zoroasters. This Persian sect were among the wise men of Babylon in Daniel chapter 2, verses 1 through 18. In fact, these pagans classified Daniel as being a wise man in the same mold from which they were cast. As such, they were very familiar with Daniel's writings, including the prophecy of the 70 weeks of years in Daniel 9, 24 through 26. Thus, the pagan promised Redeemer was not God, but a man who had been perfected through secret societies and upon whom the Christ consciousness had fallen. The Jewish secret society, the Kabbalah, was also looking for a pagan promised Redeemer. These Jews, the Pharisees, were awaiting for a man to arise from within a secret society, a mighty, rich ruler in Israel, an occult warrior who would triumphantly lead Israel out of Gentile domination, ruling from the house of David forever. Therefore, they were horrified when Jesus' birth was announced to humble shepherds instead of to the ruling council of the Kabbalah. They rejected the very idea that the promised Redeemer could possibly be born to peasants' parents in a stable. Oh no, their Redeemer would be born of secret society parents, wealthy, influential, and politically powerful. And surely this Redeemer would be born in a palace. Thus they rejected the idea that Jesus could be the Christ and did not complain when King Herod attempted to kill him.